Hey everyone, super busy day, so much happening, but as promised, I'm reading the 1560 Geneva Bible, the Founder's Bible, Jefferson's Bible, pardon me, the Puritan's Bible every night this week and seeing what that does. And it actually has created a forward momentum, in my mind anyway, as we follow this story, especially in these difficult passages about cleanliness and uncleanliness, ritual purity versus ritual impurity, Leviticus 13 to 15. So let's just jump right in. Thank you for joining me. And again, if you've got the big, beautiful hardcover 1560 Geneva Bible, by all means use it. And if you don't have it, no worries. Just go to Geneva Bible 1560.com and go to chapter 15 in Leviticus. And, this is intense too. It's more about menstruation and discharge in both men and women. Well, menstruation in women, obviously, and discharge in both genders, and how that relates to purity. So the manner of purging the unclean issues, meaning the discharge, both of men and women. The children of Israel must be separate from all uncleanness. And that is definitely the theme of this set of chapters, metaphorically above everything, is that we're supposed to live a life in which moral cleanliness matters, and even physical cleanliness matters. Moreover, the Lord spoke unto Moses, Moshe, and to Aaron, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, Whosoever has an issue from his flesh is unclean because of his issue. And an issue is a discharge. And this shall be his uncleanness in his issue, when his flesh avoids his issue, or if his flesh be stopped from his issue. This is his uncleanness. Every bed whereon he lies that has the issue, meaning the person who has the issue, shall be unclean, and everything whereon he sits shall be unclean. Whosoever also touches his bed shall wash his clothes, and wash himself in water, and shall be unclean until the evening. And he that sits on anything whereon he sat that has the issue shall wash his clothes, and wash himself in water, and shall be unclean until the evening. Also he that touches the flesh of him that has the issue shall wash his clothes, and wash himself in water, and shall be unclean until the even. If he also that has the issue spit upon him that is clean, he shall wash his clothes, and wash himself in water, and shall be unclean until the evening. And what saddle soever he rides upon that has the issue shall be unclean, and whosoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean unto the evening. And he that bears those things, carries them, shall wash his clothes, and wash himself in water, and shall be unclean until the evening. Likewise, whomsoever he touches that has the issue, and has not washed his hands in water, shall wash his clothes, and wash himself in water, and shall be unclean until the even. And the vessel of earth that he touches, which has the issue, shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. But if he that has an issue be cleansed of his issue, then shall he count him 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes, and wash his flesh in pure water, so shall he be clean. Then the 8th day he shall take unto him 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, and come before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall give them unto the priest. And the priest shall make one of them a sin offering, and of the other a burnt offering. So the priest shall make an atonement for him before the Lord for his issue. Also, if any man's issue of seed depart from him, and that is semen, he shall wash all his flesh in water, and be unclean until the evening. And every garment and every skin, meaning leather, whereupon shall be issue of seed, shall be even washed with water, and be unclean unto the even. If he that has an issue of seed do lie with a woman, they shall both wash themselves with water, and be unclean until the even. And when a woman shall have an issue, and her issue in her flesh shall be blood, she shall be put apart 7 days, and whosoever touches her shall be unclean unto the even. And whatsoever she lies upon in her separation shall be unclean, and everything that she sits upon shall be unclean. Whosoever also touches her bed shall wash his clothes and wash himself with water, and shall be unclean unto the even. And whosoever touches anything that she sat upon shall wash his clothes and wash himself in water, and shall be unclean unto the evening. So that whether he touch her bed or anything whereon she has sit, he shall be unclean unto the even. And it is a man, it should be if a man lie with her, and the flowers of her separation touch him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and all the whole bed whereon he lies shall be unclean. Also, when a woman's issue of blood runs long time besides the time of her flowers, meaning her menstrual cycle, or when she has an issue longer than her flowers, all the days of the issue of her uncleanness, she shall be unclean as in the time of her flowers. Every bed whereon she lies, as long as her issue lasts, shall be to her as her bed of her separation, and whatsoever she sits upon shall be unclean as her uncleanness when she is put apart. And whosoever touches these things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes and wash himself in water, and shall be unclean unto the even. But if she be cleansed of her issue, then she shall count her 7 days, and after she shall be clean. And in the 8th day she shall take unto her 2 turtles or 2 young pigeons, and bring them unto the priest at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And the priest shall make of the one a sin offering, and of the other a burnt offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for her before the Lord for the issue of her uncleanness. Thus shall you separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, that they die not in their uncleanness if they defile my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law of him that has an issue, and of him from whom goes an issue of seed, whereby he is defiled. Also of her that is sick of her flowers, meaning with her flowers, and of him that has a running issue, whether it be man or woman, and of him that lies with her, which is unclean. And I'm just looking at the footnotes. And line 31 says, seeing that God requires of his, meaning his people, purity and cleanness, we cannot be his except our filth and sins be purged with the blood of Jesus Christ. And that's, of course, a later Christian interpretation. Obviously, this was written before the life of Jesus and before Christianity. So in the Hebrew context, humans can cleanse themselves, humans can purify themselves. They don't require the sacrifice of God's Son. That hasn't been an issue yet. They are being given all the rules and all the instructions by God that God wants them to have to maintain a state of ritual purity. So that's Leviticus 15. And let's go to the Revised Standard Version. I think what's really interesting about this to me is that, as I told you when we talked about the last chapter, I think Leviticus 13, which is about menstruation and childbirth and the separation of women from the community after they had given birth, I shared that idea of women being ritually impure because of childbirth or menstruation was represented to me when I was growing up and a young woman as a very misogynist, anti-woman thread in traditional Judaism or in the Bible, in God's word, basically. And that's a pretty intense thing to be told, because then the logical thing is to reject God's word altogether. It's misogynist. Why would you want to buy into that? But what I wasn't told at all is that separation and cleanliness rituals were treated very even-handedly for both genders in this passage. Men are considered unclean when they ejaculate, at least till evening, and they're supposed to wash their clothes and cleanse themselves, not touch people. And they're also considered unclean if they have a discharge. Like, I imagine with this section talking about men having a discharge, it's like syphilis or gonorrhea, some sort of discharge from the body, sexual discharge of a disease, like a sexually transmitted disease. And women also who are menstruating are, instructed that they are ritually unclean. They need to separate. For 7 days, we talked about that magic number 7, and then they come back to the community. And it's very clear in this passage that Yahweh does not want to encourage men to have intercourse with women when they're menstruating. That's really interesting. Like, why? It doesn't give the why, right? But it's just very clear that they're considered unclean till evening. They're, it's a state of ritual impurity. And I talked in earlier chapters about how this tradition descends to this day with Orthodox Jews who do take a week or more, I really need to check, out of the month, around the time of a woman's menstrual cycle, to be separate from their husbands, to not have intercourse, and not even touch. And then there's a ritual purification, which this is the origin for, which is a ritual bath, a mikveh. I'm sorry, I'm just looking around because I see I'm not plugged in, and I'm going to lose battery if I'm not plugged in. So give me 20 seconds. Hi, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf. The American healthcare system is broken. Big pharma charges an arm and a leg for their products, while insurance companies are focused on growing healthcare spending. So I'm always researching ways to take care of myself naturally. And one of the most overlooked factors is improving your blood flow. That means more oxygen and nutrients to your brain, heart, muscles. All our bodies need a little extra help as we get older. I use Blood Flow 7 from Juvenon. It works by boosting nitric oxide levels 230% and opening arteries up to 62% to improve blood flow. With just 1 dose a day, it's helped improve my stamina, energy, focus, and it supports my heart health, all without caffeine or stimulants. It's doctor formulated, scientifically backed with premium and natural ingredients. I wouldn't share it if it didn't work for me and for people I love. So go to www.bloodflow7.com/daily clout, or click the link in the description below to learn more today. So this, makes it clear that it's not just women. Women are not especially gross or weird, but the human condition comes with times in which people are not in a state of purity, right? For whatever reason. I don't know why semen and blood, or that I can imagine why the discharge from gonorrhea would create a condition of impurity in which people need to purify themselves before they hang out with God in the temple of meeting, which is what all of this is about, right? It's God is right there, remember, in the camp, hanging out in the tent of meeting, not the temple of meeting, sorry, the tent of meeting, translated later as the tabernacle, but in the Hebrew, it's just a tent where God is hanging out, meeting people, right? Hanging out with his family, essentially. So people have to raise their level of purity to hang out with God. That's where all these purity guidelines originally come from, is, and God said it a couple of chapters back, you be holy because I'm holy, right? Hang out with me by all means, but I'm holy, so you have to be holy. You have to be in a state of purity. So that's weirdly comforting to me as a woman, that menstruating women are not particularly singled out. Men and women are both told that there are times in your life in which, you just need to kind of clean up, basically, before you can hang out with God. And it's interesting that it's, when men ejaculate. We certainly are not taught that in any organized religion that I'm aware of. I mean, maybe if you study the Torah with a very learned rabbi, they'll point this out to you, and it's right there in the text. But of course, very few religions actually read the Bible, in church or in synagogue. Orthodox Jews do, but Reform and conservative Jews rarely read the Hebrew Bible. And so I think you can be Jewish your whole life or Christian your whole life and never know that God considers, men who've ejaculated to be in a state of ritual impurity till they wash their clothes, and that they should not touch people until nightfall when they become pure again, or in a state of purity again. Again, I don't know why. I wish God had left footnotes giving the reasons, but we will see what the commentary is. So now let's go to the Revised Standard Version, and I'm just looking for any big differences. And here it is, line 16. And if a man has an emission of semen, he shall bathe his whole body in water and be unclean until the evening. And every garment and every skin or leather on which the semen comes shall be washed with water and be unclean until the evening. If a man lies with a woman and has an emission of semen, both of them shall bathe themselves in water and be unclean until the evening. So, thus you shall keep, this is line 31, the people of Israel separate from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle that is in their midst. Now, the people of Israel separate from their uncleanness. Is that what it says? That's so negative. And, a theme throughout is that the later translations into English tend to stress, mistranslate descriptions of human beings as really negative, gross, sinful, pathetic, defiled, miserable, humble, unworthy of love. And that's just not there in the Hebrew. It really, really, really isn't. You've read with me all the way 2.5 books. We're nearly halfway through. And there's been not a single description of human beings, ordinary human beings, as gross, pathetic, sinful, in themselves, right? Like they commit sin, but they are not innately, they don't have original sin. I'll just say it. Christianity introduced the idea of original sin. Later, definitely there was a fall, right? In the Garden of Eden, we certainly read about that. But human beings can still redeem themselves every single day in this text. They can go to God. They can bring their pigeons, they can wash themselves. They can, if they need to separate for 7 days, they can do that. They can make amends. They can kind of confess that they did wrong. They can do all the things you need to do as a human being who messes up all the time, every day. Humans can reconcile with God every single day whenever they take the initiative to do so. And they don't need a rabbi. They don't need a priest. There's a priest to help them sacrifice, as I've said. He plays an important role. But they don't need to go through Aaron to get to God. They go to Aaron to help them connect with God, but God is right there in the tent of meeting. He's right there, and he's like, hang out with me, but take a bath, like hang out with me, but have some self-respect. So I think it's really interesting too that semen is included in the states of ritual impurity. And I'm just brainstorming now, but I told you in our last chapter that in Judaism, and certainly in Hebrew practice at this time, again, it's before organized Judaism or rabbinical Judaism, but still to this day in Orthodox Judaism and Judaism generally, sex is very positive in marriage. It's treated extremely positively in marriage, not outside of marriage, but within marriage, party on, right? And indeed, I don't know if I had a chance to say this, you're actually, a mitzvah, a commandment, is to have for a married couple to have intercourse on Friday night, at least once a week, right? I mean, the rabbis really knew about keeping marriages strong. And actually, there's actually a list in rabbinical commentary of how often, it's directed at men, how often a man is supposed to have intercourse with his wife, depending on what he does for a living. So camel drivers, for instance, who are gone a lot and traveling and away from home, have a less numerous set of obligations in relation to satisfying their wives sexually than do men who are, home or nearby, working in the village, working in the fields, so on. So, but at least once a week, if they're not driving the camels far away, the men are supposed to have intercourse with their wives once a week. And there's really space for female sexuality in the Hebrew texts. It's not like, women are not erased in marriage as sexual beings. It's very much about, you've got to pay attention to your wife. You've got to pay attention to your wife at least once a week. It's a mitzvah, meaning it's a commandment from God. A recognition that women need intimacy as well and sexual satisfaction. I mean, it doesn't spell it out in so many words, but that's pretty overt, right? The idea of the chaste, sexless woman, or again, as I said in our last discussion, the idea that sex even between married people is kind of shameful, really is a Christian idea that gained traction, as I mentioned, in the 4th century with these hermits, celibate men who were all about celibacy, church fathers, and also again in the Middle Ages with various ideologies about women and femaleness that included, submissiveness and not having legal rights and being, certainly not being portrayed as sexual, right? In the Middle Ages in the West, there was this split between you have to stay healthy and well at times like this. That I often have suffered from mobility issues, and now I don't. Part of my lifestyle is Native Path collagen. So Native Path's collagen formula is made with ingredients that are scientifically developed to increase bone mineral density, support tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? So right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/daily clout, you can stock up on Native Path collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You can try it risk-free today. It is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners, and it's third-party tested for heavy metals, which makes sure that it is pure and safe. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything. I add it to my oatmeal. You can add it to coffee or smoothies. Its formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes without clumping. And the best part is Native Path is offering amazing bundle deals, 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a trusted choice, and they offer an 800 number. You can ask any question. A real person is waiting to help. You can join a private Facebook community. I love these people. Share recipes, success stories. So that's getnativepath.com/daily clout and start your experience of transformation today. Virgins and whores and really nothing in the middle, right? But Judaism doesn't have that. And this is a big thing to wrap your brain around because our cultures are really constructed around how we think about women and how we think about the relationship of women to men and marriage. And it's just so different. There isn't a virgin whore dichotomy for married women in Judaism. There just isn't. There's definitely a whore dichotomy. There's a whore/wife dichotomy in the Hebrew Bible, and we'll get to that. I mean, women are stoned to death in the Hebrew Bible for having sex outside of marriage. But but within marriage, there is nothing negative about sexuality. It's very, very positive. So where I'm going with that is, why would an emission of semen be something that puts you into a state of impurity, ritual impurity, if you're a guy? I can imagine that sex is so important in a way, in Judaism, like married sex, that it's sort of critical to keep the sacred and the profane from merging, right? But I really don't know. I could also imagine that, again, they're in the desert, there's very little water, and they're living in close quarters. Some of it could be just basic hygiene, like we can't assume that people in tribes based on being shepherds at that time had basic hygiene. And it's very possible that some of the basis of these directions from Yahweh are kind of explaining to pretty barbaric tribal people, here's how you have basic human hygiene. And also, to avoid, to avoid grossness, right? I mean, I don't know, like, I don't see in other ancient texts directions about washing up after sexual intercourse. So it could be like literally God is teaching these very barbaric people, how to eat not like an animal, how to worship not like an idolater, and just how to be a member of human society with some decency and self-respect, and not gross. And it's, as right on and hippie-ish as we want to be, it's a good idea to wash, after you've had intercourse. And I can see that by the same token, barbaric people who have women bleeding once a month and don't have tampons, don't have menstrual pads, have very little water, really keep everything cleaner, right, by separating the menstruating woman from the community, as harsh and misogynist as that sounds on the surface. So these are just thoughts of mine, really trying to imagine back to what daily life was like for this barbaric tribal people with these sheep and goats and turtle doves in the middle of the desert with very little running water. But Yahweh is taking cleanliness seriously. And it really brings up that expression, cleanliness is next to godliness. When I was a child, I heard that expression. I sort of thought, why? Like, I know it's good to be clean, but why is it a spiritual matter to be clean? But maybe this is really God kind of instructing humans, you're not donkeys or sheep or pigs who wallow around in filth. You're humans and you're separate from animals. And so one of the ways that humans are separate from animals and come closer to a divine state is to take care to be clean, and not to bring every bodily fluid into every situation. There is literally no rabbinical basis for what I just said. I'm just imagining. And there's very little textual basis. As you see, that the text is very directive. It's instructions, but God doesn't really add the why, except at the end, this is about cleanliness. This is about purity. This is about the children of Israel have to be pure and clean to be with me because I am holy. So let's now go to the Hebrew. And I'm not going to read all of it because it's quite repetitive, of course. Although I hope you notice that repetition, he shall remain unclean till evening, he shall remain unclean till evening, he shall remain unclean till evening, is quite hypnotic. And it really has the effect of drilling down into your consciousness. God really means it. It's quite poetic. And I'm going to read just 3 sentences in the Hebrew so you can hear the poetry. And this is line 5. Ve'ish, and a man, asher yiga b'mishkavo, who touches in his bedding or in the place that he lies down, Yechabes will launder bigdav, his garments, verachatz b'mayim, and will wash them in water, v'tameh ad ha'arev, and he is impure, that word tameh, ad ha'arev, until the evening. Ve'heshev al hakli, and he who sits on a tool or an object, asher yeshev alav hazav, upon which the man with the discharge sat, yechaves bigdav, he'll launder his garments, v'rachatz b'mayim, and will wash them in water, v'tameh ad ha'arev, and be impure until the evening. Ve'hanogea, and he who touches, bibsar hazav, in the flesh of the man with the discharge, yechabes bigdav, will launder his garments, verachatz b'mayim, and will wash them in water, v'tameh ad ha'arev, and be impure until the evening. And this is a repetition that is sentence after sentence after sentence, and it is very, evocative. But in the Hebrew, it's not really shaming. There's no aura of shame. Let me read you line 16, which is about semen. V'ish ki titse mimeno, and a man who goes out from him, shichvat zara, an emission of seed, literally, zaroa is a seed. And, as you know, semen does have like seeds of tiny people. It has spermatozoa in it. But before the mechanism of sperm and egg was understood, just like it was assumed that women got pregnant because they were like the earth, it was assumed that men impregnated them because they are like seeds being planted in the earth. And that's kind of true. So it's not wrong. Verachatz b'mayim, and he'll wash in water, et kol besaro, all of his flesh, v'tameh ad ha'arev, and he'll be impure until the evening. And so let's see how they describe menstrual separation. Line 20. V'chol asher tishkav alav, and whoever lies on it, whatever she lies on, benidata, during her menstrual separation, yitma v'chol asher, will be impure, or it will become impure, v'chol asher tishev alav yitma, and everyone who sits on it, what she's laying on, will become impure. But again, tameh is not like, it's not unclean, as we said, yet yesterday or the day before. It's really a state of ritual impurity. It's more neutral, like it's serious, but it's less judgy and more, that's the state you're in, and you want to get into a state of holiness. So let's go all the way down to 31, which is the closest we get to a Y for all this activity. So you're supposed to bring your sin offering and your burnt offering, and make so that the Kohen, the priest, shall effect atonement for the menstruating woman or the woman with discharge before the Lord from the uncleanness of her discharge. In line 31, this is the Y. Ve'hizartem, and you will separate. And I hope you can hear the echo of the word zaroa, which means seed. There are two different meanings, but they have really similar roots. Vehizartem, and this is just the poetry of the Hebrew. Et Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, the sons of Israel, mitum atam, from their ritual impurity, that root again, tameh, velo yamutu, that they should not die, betumatam, in their ritual impurity, betamam, et mishkani asher betocham, and thus making impure my tent, my dwelling, which is in the midst of them. And then God explains, Zot Torat Hazav, this is the law for one who has a discharge. Ve Asher Titse Mimeno, and from one who goes out from him, Sichvat Zera, an emission of semen, Letam Abba, to become unclean in it. Veha dava benidata, and for a woman who is having a menstrual flow, vehazav et zovo, and for one who has a discharge, lezachar, to a male, o lenekeva, or to a female, uleish asher yishkav, and to a person, a man, who will lie. Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout. Have you ever wondered why your brain can feel foggy even when you're eating clean and exercising? It might not be burnout, it could be parasites. Groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan MacDonald reveals a direct link between chronic parasite infections and neurological diseases such as multiple sclerosis. Parasites can cause inflammation, nerve damage, and long-term cognitive decline. More reason to do a full body cleanse at least once a year. The wellness company has a solution for you, ivermectin and mebendazole, the gold standard parasite solution, now combined in one cleanse combo, designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support your immune system naturally. Medical grade, not some trendy herbal gimmick. Fill out a quick intake form and you'll get a 3-month supply shipped straight to your door. Maha is officially here, and the wellness company is making hard to get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to dailyclout.health and use code dailyclout to save $60 off plus free shipping on all orders. Cleanse your body today. Get rid of parasites today. Thank you. Meaning cohabit or have sex with im tmea, with an unclean woman. So there it is. It's close to a Y. It's not a thoroughgoing Y. And then let's see what the Rebbe says. This is quite an easy explanation, and it kind of makes sense. And the headline, rather optimistically, is "There is always hope." And the commentary is, on an allegorical level, abnormal uterine bleeding, i.e. that occurs outside the menstrual cycle, alludes to an abnormal exaggeration of self-centeredness. Just as abnormal uterine bleeding imparts a more serious degree of ritual defilement, requiring more elaborate rituals designed to enable the woman to restore herself to full ritual purity, so does exaggerated self-centeredness require more intense spiritual treatment than normal. Well, that's for sure. Nonetheless, the fact that the Torah prescribes purification rituals for abnormal uterine bleeding teaches us that the power of repentance is such that even someone who is suffering from excessive spiritual maladies can still be cured. And that's it. That's the commentary. It's very short for this passage. So I guess what I would, urge you to take away, at the risk of repeating myself, sorry, is what the Rebbe said at the end there. That anyone can be cured, right? Even someone who's suffering from excessive spiritual maladies can still be cured. I literally have no idea why they would connect abnormal uterine bleeding with exaggerated self-centeredness. I wish the Rebbe was present and we could ask, but he is no longer on this planet. He passed away in 1994. And I don't know why there's that connection, except to say that a lot of the commentary does treat these literal stories very allegorically. But I do want to stress when he says abnormal uterine bleeding imparts a more serious degree of ritual defilement, requiring more elaborate rituals designed to enable the woman to restore herself to full ritual purity. That's the real takeaway I want you to have. It's such a pre-Western, pre-Christian, post-Egyptian idea that anyone can be restored at any time to full ritual purity if they do certain things and listen to what God asked. I think it's a very radical message. I think it's why the translators of the Geneva Bible, fled to Geneva, Switzerland to produce this translation, to give everyone that message, which is such an important, empowering message, different from what the Catholic Church was teaching at that time. No disrespect to the Catholic Church, just being historically accurate, and for a few hundred years before that, that you had to go through the priests and through the church to be absolved, to have your sins taken away, to not go to hell. Not in this text. In this text, anyone, no matter what state of ritual impurity they're in, can, lashevet, engage in tshuva, and go back and become ritually pure again. And you notice that it's the woman becoming ritually pure, not the priest making her ritually pure, right? She's taking the initiative herself. So I closed it out, but I just want to see what the Revised Standard Version says about that, because I'd be very surprised if they use the same language. Let's see at the end. No, it's very bad language. It's not the same. This concludes line 31. Thus you shall keep the people of Israel separate from their uncleanness. That is so different. What is line 31 in Hebrew? It is, and you shall separate the children of Israel from their ritual impurity. So it's a different resonance, separate from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle that is in their midst. And then it ends, this is the law for him who has a discharge and for him who has an emission of semen becoming unclean thereby, also for her who is sick with her impurity. That is, for anyone, male or female, who has discharge, and for the man who lies with a woman who is unclean. Her who is sick with her impurity, I will say that is super misogynist. And that's not what the Hebrew says. What the Hebrew says, and for a woman who has her menstrual flow. It doesn't say sick with her impurity. Sometimes I'm not going to say hate, but I feel very angry at these translators. It says vehadava benidata, and for a woman in her menstrual flow, vehazav et zovo, and for one who has a discharge, whether male or female. It doesn't say she's sick in Hebrew. It doesn't say she's impure, even in the last sentence in Hebrew. It just says that she's menstruating, right? That's what it says. She's having her period. It doesn't say she's sick. It doesn't say she's impure, let alone, I'm going to read it again because it's so awful, her who is sick with her impurity. How is that going to make millions of women and girls who have read the Revised Standard Version since the middle of the 20th century feel about themselves? It's awful. And I think it's not okay because it's not in the Hebrew. She's just menstruating. She's not sick. She's not sick in her impurity. She's just menstruating. In fact, that's a very interesting inversion from 2 chapters ago, where she was sitting in the blood of her purity, right? The translators of the Revised Standard Version have managed to turn that absolutely inside out, not to erase the fact that a menstruating woman is in a state of ritual impurity. True, but it's a state of ritual impurity. It's not her being impure in her essence. And it's certainly not her being sick in her impurity. Honestly, I really hate. There's nothing about sickness in this chapter. There was with leprosy, but this chick is just menstruating, right? It's like, it's a very misogynist mistranslation. All right. Netaslabi says translations can really goof people up, and that is true. Let's see. Sean Rhodes says Adam names her Eve after eating from the tree. Adam was given knowledge. He learned wife would be mother to all living. Well, that is certainly true. Now, Sandy Hardy brings up something so smart. I'm going to show it. And we almost got, we almost got to this insight in the last two chapters ago. Remember when I was saying, a woman has just given birth and she's recovering from giving birth, and God says, go hang out with the other ladies or by yourself for 33 days, and your husband can't demand sex from you, and you're not expected to do housework. Everyone will manage fine without you. Go take care of yourself. Basically, that is one reading that you could legitimately give Yahweh's instruction that women who've had childbirth should go have some rest by themselves. Because again, they're not running their households when they're resting by themselves. They're not cooking, they're not cleaning, they're not looking after the other children. Presumably other women are stepping in to shoulder that burden. I can't elide the fact that I think it was still a polygamous society. I believe so, yeah. But so it could be other wives doing her housework or concubines, but she got to have a rest. You could read it as God protecting women who've just given birth. And they also get to be with their baby for that time. They're not taking the baby away. So really good bonding, right? All she has to do is bond with the baby. In fact, when I wrote a book about pregnancy called Misconceptions, I was very struck by the Orthodox Jewish tradition of a woman with a baby being kind of set aside in this way for, I believe it was 40 days, but I guess it's 33, because it seemed, like our culture doesn't allow new moms to just have no other responsibilities but be with their newborn baby, which is overwhelming, and is so good for the baby and the mother to not have the mom be exhausted, to not have the mom be distracted, for the mom to be able to be just with her baby, her newborn baby. And so Sandy Hardy says, I've wondered if God was protecting a woman by giving her her own tent for a week. That is very interesting. Maybe so, right? I mean, really, maybe so. If you think about it, these women had no legal rights. As I've said elsewhere, the idea of marital rape didn't even exist. I mean, marriage was rape, essentially. You could just, have your wife sexually whenever you wanted if you were a man. There was no means no, at that time, if you're married. And married women, as well as concubines, were really treated as chattel. Married women had slightly more rights and respect in the community. Well, they had more respect in the community than concubines or slaves, but it wasn't marriage as we understand it today. And cooking and cleaning and providing sex whenever a man wanted was definitely expected. And there were no laws against beating your wife or, striking your wife. Interestingly, that comes later. We're going to find out that God comes up with laws against striking your wife. But I can see that God would give married women a break for a week, a month, and just be like, go have a rest. He can't bother you. He can't, I mean, I'm not being critical of marriage. I'm very happily married, but, it's not thousands of years ago, and a lot has happened to raise the status of women, even in marriage, and to kind of evolve men past beating and raping their wives. So that was not the case at this time. And maybe God was protecting women. That's a really interesting idea. And it could be one of those things where, like in a meeting, you really want something to happen, so you try to make it seem like the idea of the person who might object to it. I could see God saying to husbands, like, oh, you really don't want to touch her. She's, she's impure, and, go have a rest, making it seem like you don't want to touch her because it's, you're defiling yourself. Well, actually, she's just having a rest. That's a really interesting idea. Let's see, any other comments? Shona Duncan says, very interesting. I remember reading some of those things in the Old Testament, indeed. Let's see. Interesting. Period blood containing a discarded egg and sperm are both products that together produce life. When they do not come together, life can't be produced. I don't know that I would put it that way, because ovulation happens 2 weeks before menstruation. And menstruation is the uterine lining. But I don't mean to call you out, Sean. That's a very interesting contribution. And definitely symbolically, I agree with you that by keeping men and women separate, it is kind of a Sabbath, for kind of both genders. And as I said, nothing against mixing the genders, obviously, but I know that this could work as a kind of Sabbath. I went to services at Chabad, as I shared with you a couple of weeks ago, and women sit separately from men. And again, I was taught that this is very misogynist and very exclusionary. But when you talk to people who are part of Chabad, they say it's to help you concentrate. And I honestly felt much more able to concentrate on the Psalms and the prayers and my own relationship to God in a woman-only space. And I imagine the same is true for men. I don't know why that is. The sexes distract each other. We do. We're designed to. So it could be symbolically like, you guys are going to kill each other unless you have a break, once a month. And then you can, and again, Orthodox Jewish women have told me this is the case. I shared this a couple of, commentaries ago. When you have a break, like a holiday, like a Sabbath from your marriage almost, for a week, a month, they say it's much more romantic when you get together again. I think that's interesting. You don't take each other for granted. You don't get jaded. The thing that is so hard for marriages in a modern Western culture is boredom and overstimulation. Like, you're getting so much erotic stimulation from ads and pornography. I'm not saying seeking it out, but just in your face everywhere. I try to watch Netflix, and it's just like full on sex everywhere you look when you just want to watch Netflix. And I'm not a prude, but the effect of this, and I wrote about this in my book on female sexuality, is to make people jaded within their relationships, and literally to desensitize men, especially. Male sexuality is very desensitized and deadened with kind of overstimulation. And so maybe the rabbis really knew something. Overstimulation, like in pornography. I don't mean don't be excited in your marriage or your relationship, but maybe the rabbis really knew something by closing down shop for a week, that, and maybe they knew something specifically about male sexual desire, because if men are hunters, and if they can't have it on tap, maybe it heightens attraction within marriage, which, the challenge is to maintain attraction and desire in, decade after decade after decade. Well, maybe the rabbis knew, move the woman away from being available to man once, for a week, a month, and the man will remember why he fell in love with her, or why he wants her, or it'll heighten the desire. Let's see if there's anything else. Lots of comments, but that's a very intriguing idea, Sandy Hardy, and maybe it's true. It does seem intuitive. And yeah, those are the comments that we have. We've been together for 50 minutes, and I should probably say goodnight, but we're doing really well. I promised you I'd read a chapter of the Geneva Bible every night. I think this is day 4 of having done it sequentially. It gets easier. And I'm really looking forward to it every night, even these challenging, difficult chapters. I always learn something, and I hope you do too. So thank you for joining me, and I'll meet you tomorrow night. Oh no, it'll have to be early because I'm observing Shabbat again. It's Shabbat tomorrow night. I do encourage you, whether you're Christian or Jewish or Muslim. Well, if you're Muslim, you already have a version of Shabbat, but and if you're Christian, you have Shabbat, right? But people don't tend to observe it anymore. But, small groups of people observe the Lord's Day the way Shabbat is supposed to be observed, but it's pretty uncommon to do a full Shabbat for Christians. But I really encourage you to try Shabbat, even baby steps, starting tomorrow night at sunset. Light the candles, bless the bread, bless the wine. I'll show you how to do it tomorrow night. Or just in your own faith tradition, set aside time, 24 hours, to be off electronics with your family, with your loved ones, paying full attention to them, no interruptions, off television, just having a rest and, hanging out with the Holy One, as they said at Chabad in one of the songs, which sounded really cool to me. But I'm going to try it again. I've been loving it. And Jay Fletch too says, thank you. I love this. And Nedislabi says, Christians go to church on Sunday. It's not the Sabbath. I know that's a really interesting conversation for another time, because they used to observe Shabbat on Shabbat, and then it got switched to Sunday, which is not Shabbat. But no disrespect to Christians. It's just a very interesting historical shift. And I do want to know more about it. All right, guys, if you like these, please support me on Outspoken on Substack, or us over at Daily Clout. It helps us produce and distribute them. And either way, thank you for joining along. And I hope you have a wonderful night. And I will see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.